It was March 2020. I remember sitting on my couch at like 11 p.m., watching the news, and then, almost without thinking, opening Amazon. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I didn't need anything. But 20 minutes later, I had a cart full of stuff. A puzzle, two books I'd probably never read, a weighted blanket, some fancy coffee I'd never tried. And here's the thing. I didn't even feel good about it. I felt this weird mix of temporary relief and immediate guilt. Like I'd just eaten an entire sleeve of Oreos and was already ashamed before I finished the last one. I closed the tab, reopened it, and then I checked out. And here's what I realized, sitting there in the dark with my laptop glow and my anxiety and my $140 impending regret. This wasn't really about the stuff. It was never about the stuff. But this isn't about willpower or financial discipline or some simple fix like delete your saved payment info. It's actually about something that goes much, much deeper than any of that. There are three psychological patterns at play when we overspend during a crisis. And the third one completely changed how I think about money and, honestly, about myself. So let's start with what actually happens in your brain when the world feels like it's falling apart. When there's a crisis, a pandemic, a war, an economic collapse, whatever it is, your brain registers uncertainty. And to your brain, uncertainty is not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous, survival level dangerous. Because we evolved in a world where uncertainty literally meant you might not eat tomorrow, or a predator might find you, or your tribe might leave you behind. Your brain doesn't distinguish between the stock market crashed and there's a lion nearby. The alarm system fires the same way. So your nervous system gets flooded with cortisol. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that makes rational, long-term decisions, gets literally suppressed. And the older, more primal part of your brain takes over. The part that says, get resources, get them now, get them before someone else does. And get this. A 2020 study found that consumer spending on non-essential goods actually spiked in the first weeks of the COVID lockdowns, even as unemployment was rising. People who had less certainty about their financial future were spending more on things like home goods, entertainment subscriptions, and food delivery. More, not less. That's not irrational. That's your ancient brain trying to create a feeling of control in a moment where control feels impossible. Because here's the psychological truth underneath it all of it. Buying something is one of the only actions that gives you an immediate, concrete result when everything else is abstract and terrifying. You click buy, something happens, a confirmation number appears, a package gets scheduled. In a world that feels completely out of your hands, that tiny loop of cause and effect is intoxicating. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just doing it with a credit card instead of a hunting spear. Think about what happened during the 2008 financial crisis. And I mean really think about it. Not the headlines, but the behavior underneath the headlines. Luxury goods sales collapsed, right? That's what you'd expect. But here's what actually happened at the same time. McDonald's had its best year in decades. Dollar stores exploded, and lottery ticket sales went up in almost every state that was experiencing the highest unemployment rates. Up. When people had the least money, they were spending more on lottery tickets. That's not stupidity. That's hope purchasing. When your sense of agency collapses, when you feel like the normal rules of work hard, get ahead have been completely pulled under your feet, your brain goes looking for any mechanism that restores a sense of possibility. A lottery ticket isn't the financial decision. It's an emotional one. It's buying the feeling that tomorrow could be different. And this is the exact same thing happening when you fill your Amazon cart at 11 p.m. during a news cycle that won't stop. You're not shopping. You're self-soothing with the only tool your brain recognizes as immediate and controllable. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that I think most financial advice completely misses. We talk about overspending like it's a character flaw, like people who struggle with money during hard times just lack discipline, or they're not budgeting correctly, or they need another spreadsheet. But here's a number that stopped me cold. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Not just people at the lower end of the income scale, people making six figures, people with good jobs and college degrees and retirement accounts. That's not a discipline problem, that's a psychological one, and it has everything to do with what researchers call the scarcity mindset. When your brain is operating from scarcity, when there's genuine stress about whether you have enough, it actually reduces your cognitive bandwidth. It literally makes you worse at making decisions. There's this incredible study out of Harvard and Princeton where researchers found that financial stress consumes the equivalent of about 13 IQ points of cognitive capacity. 13 points. That's comparable to losing a full night of sleep. So the moments when you most need to make clear-headed financial decisions are literally the moments when you're least equipped to make them. And crises don't create scarcity mindset. They amplify the one that was already there. That low-level financial anxiety you carry around on a Tuesday morning, during a global event, that thing gets turned up to 11. But here's the part that surprised me most when I started digging into this. The spending isn't random. It follows a very specific emotional logic. Think about what people bought during COVID. Puzzles, bread makers, exercise equipment, garden supplies, craft kits, elaborate kitchen tools. Notice anything? These are all things that produce something, things that give you a tangible output, a loaf of bread, a finished puzzle, a garden. Your brain, drowning in uncertainty, reaches for things that feel like evidence of agency, proof that you can make something happen in a world that nothing feels certain. Nicolas Cage, and I know this sounds like a random left turn, but bear with me, famously spent his way through a $150 million fortune, not on boring investments, on castles, islands, a dinosaur skull, and a pyramid-shaped tomb he had built for himself in New Orleans. On the surface, that looks insane, but there's a psychological through line. Cage grew up with financial instability, and when he suddenly had money, his brain overcorrected. Every purchase was his nervous system trying to build a wall between himself and the fear of not having enough. The more grandiose the purchase, the more solid the wall felt. Until it didn't. That's an extreme version of something incredibly common. We buy things not for what they do, but for what they mean to us emotionally. A weighted blanket isn't just a blanket, it's a physical object that says you are safe right now. A stockpile of canned goods isn't just food, it's future-proofing made visible. Your brain is trying to turn abstract anxiety into concrete objects it can point to and feel better about. Okay, so if this is literally hardwired into us, if our brains are evolutionarily designed to seek control through acquisition during moments of threat, what can we actually do about it? Because I'm not here to just make you feel bad in a more articulate way. Here's what I've learned, and it's not a budgeting system, it's a recognition practice. The moment you catch yourself reaching for your phone to open a shopping app, or refreshing your cart, or just browsing when you don't need anything, that's not a moment of weakness. That's actually your brain telling you something important. It's saying, I feel out of control right now, and I need to do something about it. The problem isn't the feeling. The problem is that shopping is an incredibly expensive way to respond to it. So the practice is this. You get curious instead of judgmental. You ask, what am I actually trying to feel right now? Sometimes the answer is safety. Sometimes it's agency. Sometimes it's connection or hope or just distraction from a news cycle that won't stop being terrible. And once you can name it, you can find something that actually delivers that feeling without the 3 a.m. credit card guilt. A walk, a phone call, making something with your hands, reorganizing one drawer, tiny completable tasks that give your brain that same loop of cause and effect without the financial cost. I still check Amazon during bad news cycles sometimes. I'm not going to pretend I've cracked some code. But now when I catch myself doing it, I pause and I think, oh, this is the lion. This is my ancient brain trying to protect me in the only way it knows right now. And honestly, there's something almost tender about that. Your spending during a crisis isn't weakness. It's your nervous system trying desperately to take care of you with the tools it has. The work isn't to shame yourself out of it. The work is to give your brain better tools. Because the most financially empowering thing you can ever do isn't optimize a spreadsheet. It's understanding why you do what you do with money in the first place, and meet yourself there with a little more compassion than the world usually offers. I'm genuinely curious whether you recognize this pattern in yourself, because I think most of us do, and most of us have never had a name for it. And maybe that's where it starts.